All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. Our group is Group 17, From Streams to Seats, Understanding Optimal Concert Venue Size Using Fan Data. And we're going to kick off with a quote from Tom Windish of Paradigm Talent Agency, talking about the hardest part of booking a tour. There's no real way to predict the reception of the release, and it can lead to risk of losing potential ticket sales, disappointing fans, losing on the investment. And when venues aren't at capacity, such as effects of the pandemic, many well-known venues fill fewer seats. They can overestimate ticket demand, and that can result in significant product loss. And fluctuating audience behaviors can again allow or result in agents making risky decisions and assumptions based on artists' popularity. So to address these challenges, we really wanted to try to build a model using fan engagement metrics to understand appropriate venue sizes, and we thought that this was most valuable for independent artists planning their first tour.
So some of the parameters that we looked at for our analysis are independent artists, which we defined as unsigned on Chartmetric, as well as above 1 million monthly listeners. Venue size equals venue capacity, and then defining what fans and fan metrics are. So fan metrics are Spotify conversion rate, popularity, Chartmetric's engagement rank, as well as Instagram engagement.
However, when we started looking at the data and trying to work with it, we noticed some limitations. Really, we wanted to build a model, but due to limitations with the venue capacity data, we saw that a lot of values were null, and they didn't actually address actual attendance, but rather just the capacity of the venues, and they didn't reflect the variance and layouts of particular venues, especially if they had other uses and hosted other types of events. We also did not have some publicly available DSP data, such as Apple Music engagement. And so we did pivot after finding out these limitations.
Given the limitations in this data and that we didn't have access to full data for a clear dependent variable, we decided to use clustering to group artists based on characteristics that we think would separate them by their fan base and indicate something about optimal venue size. So our process for this was first to select our sample. It was about 1,000 independent artists on Chartmetric. Then second, to write and run the k-means clustering script, and then third, to find artists with similar combinations of metrics and compare the venue sizes for artists who have already done tours. This is just an example of some of the code that we can come back to if anyone has any questions. We ended up with 6 clusters total. And these are the results. The left table shows how many artists are in each cluster, and as you can see, cluster 2 and cluster 4 are somewhat of outliers, so we'll disregard those for now, but you can see sort of the different combinations of metrics. In cluster 1, for example, Spotify conversion rate is high for these artists that fell in this cluster, but Spotify popularity is a little bit low. On the other hand, cluster 3, the Spotify conversion rate is a little bit lower, but Instagram engagement is higher. And then these are the same results in just a visual format, kind of showing that each of these take on a different shape based on what metrics they're strong in.
So for our analysis, we wanted to do a case study. So we chose Hallie Abadi. She is a part of the sort of the unsigned artist group that we saw on Chartmetric, and also fits our fan engagement metrics as well. And so she's an independent artist, has done a couple shows, so she's really looking to tour in the future. And so we looked at that song kick information, and we found that Hallie is a cluster 3. And what we did then is we compared it to other cluster 3s that we found through our analysis. So we found those similar artists, and then we averaged the capacity of the 5 most recent venues for those similar artists. Michelle, do you want to take this one?
Sure. And so when we averaged all of these artist venues and their capacities, we found that the overall venue capacity average was about 920. And so when we're looking to book concerts for Hallie, we would suggest then she book according to that average. we know that our solution as it stands only solves part of the puzzle. And so next steps would be to integrate really accurate concert venue data from sources like bands in town. So again, we can pull that venue capacity as well as average attendance. We'd also be interested in making sure that we can look at location-specific venues and be able to predict using Google Places API. And then we'd also look into how we can utilize this model for venues so that they can predict capacity and their return on investment for concerts before booking artists. And that brings us to the end. We're happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. All right, judges, now is your opportunity to ask questions. You'll have 2 to 3 minutes to ask some questions.
I have a quick one. This is Ashok. Thank you for this presentation. When you did the K-means clustering, can you just briefly describe like what are the distinct clusters that you looked at? I think I missed that in the presentation.
Yeah, so we can take a look at, on the right, you can see the 6 different clusters we have. Like I mentioned, 2 and 4 seem like outliers, so we're going to disregard those. And then each of the other ones are basically grouped based on combinations in metrics. So for example, one cluster might be high in metric 1, low in metric 2 and 3, and then medium in the following. And then each one has sort of like a slightly different combination of those metrics. And since these metrics are a combination of like artist like fan base size, but also fan base on the engagement level for a specific fan, we think that by doing this clustering and combining the different metrics and seeing how they cluster together, we can find out a little bit about how likely someone's fan base would be to go to a live show.
Got it. So they're kind of mutually exclusive in a way that they are different levels of engagement, not like different characteristics altogether, right?
Right.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This is Meng. I don't know how to raise a hand on. It's missing from my screen, but yeah, Meng here from BandLab. Really interesting stuff that you guys are doing here. Just a quick question: is there any weighting for size of country? Because I saw obviously you're using an average of venue sizes. Was there any weighting, for example, to users' top countries where they were popular as you were doing the data analysis?
So unfortunately, with some of the song kick data and some also we tried the Ticketmaster API, got a lot of null information, and so we weren't unfortunately able to kind of weight that at all. We obviously didn't want to exclude any certain country or even like something like Boise, Idaho, which wouldn't necessarily get as much foot traffic. It was just kind of the data that we had available at the time. But we really want to look in the future, as we talked about on our sort of one of our last slides, is like using something such as the Google Maps, Google Places API in order to look at that more in depth.
Understand. Cool. Thank you.